What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another look at recent sales prices for AFA, CAS, and UKG graded items. And there were so many items that sold in last weekend's auctions, that I'm going to have to make two videos. So this is part one. Part two is tomorrow, and I believe it's all UKG graded items that sold in auctions that they kind of deserve their own video, because if you remember from a few what to buy videos, I kind of mentioned everything that was at auction, and there were so much stuff that sold, and just beautiful items. So I'm going to devote a second video to loose graded items tomorrow, and they'll all be the UKG graded items. I did sneak in a few, though, so let's go ahead and take a closer look. And as a quick reminder, if you have a collection to sell, whether it's loose graded items like we're covering today, loose figures, mint on card, vehicles, if they're vintage Kenner related items and you're looking to sell it, no matter how big the collection is, you can reach out to me at actionfiguregrader@gmail.com, and I'll put you in touch with some trusted buyers. I've had a lot of subscribers that have done that here recently. All right, let's go take a look. We're going to start off with some CAS items. That Star Wars Daddy, a YouTuber and a buddy of mine, and also a Patreon supporter, Michael A. He had some beautiful CAS graded items for sale at auction. This was a CAS 85 plus Zuckuss with the circles on the backs of the heels. And I was actually planning on bidding on this one, but then another one came up on Rogue 5 Toys on Facebook. That was an AFA 85, and I was like, well, AFA 85, CAS 85 plus, probably about the same. And I did pay a little bit more, quite a bit more than what this one ended up going for. So maybe I made the wrong choice. But this was a CAS 85 plus, and it sold for $96, free shipping. That was a pretty good bargain there for a nice looking Zuckuss. I also had a Han Solo Bespin graded CAS 85. This one was the standard Hong Kong. So, you know, a fairly common figure, but a nice looking example and high grade. And surprisingly, I don't have any Han Bespins at all in my collection, except for one bootleg. So maybe once I kind of finish off some of these Han Hoss and Han First 12s, that Han Smugglers that I've been getting here lately, probably time to focus on Han Bespin. Just don't have any, and it's probably one of those figures that you really need to have in your collection. And it's probably actually, other than maybe Han Hoth, I like the Han Bespin better than I do the Han First 12. That's just me. I don't know what it is. I just love the outfit, the colors, everything about it. $94 on that one. Next up was a CAS 85 Plus Imperial TIE Fighter pilot. This one is the Hong Kong and sold for $126. So I would argue those first two were probably a little low. This one's probably a little closer to market value. You know, I equate an 85 Plus from CAS to about an 85 with AFA. And, you know, I would say an AFA 85 probably still goes for a little bit more than 126, but that was a little closer to market value. The other two, I think, came in a little bit low. Next up was a Biker Scout. This was graded CAS 85 Taiwan Biker Scout with the long snout, I believe, long mask and snout. Why did I call it a snout? So long mask Taiwan. This is another variant I wouldn't mind picking up. That one sold for $131.50. It looks to me like there's maybe some slight discoloration to the torso. It might be my imagination, but it looks a little yellow to me. Maybe I'm wrong. But $131.50, again, a very fair price there. Next up was a Hong Kong Bush graded CAS 85. That one sold for $112.50. That was labeled as the unpainted torso, so I guess there's a painted and an unpainted torso. I don't know my Bush variants very well, but that's, you know, a nice looking figure. It looked to be in pretty good shape there. I still want to get a loose graded Taiwan. That's one I wouldn't mind having in my collection. Next up was a Hong Kong Boba Fett CAS 85. That one sold for $212.50. I would say that's pretty close to fair market value. You know, an AFA 85 probably goes for about the same price, maybe slightly higher, maybe like $240-ish. So, you know, that one's kind of valued in the ballpark of an AFA 80 plus, somewhere between an AFA 80 plus and an AFA 85. It kind of falls right in the middle there, I think, in terms of that final sales price. But most of these that I'm showing you were at auction, and here was the big one. This one was not Star Wars Daddy. This was Wampa Hug, and he had a Stormtrooper Hong Kong graded 90 plus. When's the last time you've ever seen a 90 plus grade Stormtrooper? And it looked to be every bit of one. I mean, you know, there was no discoloration or color difference that I could discern between the torso and the legs. This was bright white, and hence it got a really, really high score from CAS. That one sold for $533, and that's kind of on par with about what an AFA 90 will sell for. There was an AFA 90 that I think actually sold for a little bit higher. It might have approached $600, if not above that. But the market's basically saying it's pretty close in value to an AFA 90. $533 was the final sales price. That's a beautiful figure, though, and every bit of a 90 grade, in my opinion. Next up, we do have a few UKG graded items, although I'm saving the vast majority of them for tomorrow because there was just so many of them. This one was a China raised bar COO Luke Farm Boy, and you can see on the back of the leg there where it says China on a raised bar. There's also a blank raised bar version, which I consider to be the French Meccano, but who knows? I can't keep them all straight, but a lot of the French Meccano figures were blank raised bars, so there was no country of origin on this raised bar. On the China, there is a little China designation there on that raised bar. But this is one I sent out to my Patreon supporters in a buy it now situation, just because it's kind of a harder variation to find, harder country of origin to find for Luke Farm Boy. It was a UKG 80%, and it was listed for 175 pounds, which is $220 US. I thought that was a pretty good price, and clearly somebody agreed with me. Brand new case style on that one as well. Here was another one I did send out. This was the no COO brown-haired Luke Bespin. So this would appear on like Palatoy cards or like tri-logos, and very hard to find on the tri-logos. But this is the no COO. Now, this is not to be confused with the blank raised bar, which is a different figure. That would be like the Meccano, I believe. But this one is just the straight no COO, and with the brown hair. That one sold in a buy it now situation. Again, I sent this one out and it sold pretty quickly for 154 euros, which is 165 US. I mean, it did have some slight torso discoloration, but it's very slight. But that's pretty common for the brown-haired Lukes. I mean, they just almost always get some sort of very slight color differentiation between the torso and the legs and arms. So I thought that was a great price for a brand new case style, and price that, even with shipping to the US, you're talking $200. I mean, if I didn't already have it, I probably would end up buying it, to be honest with you. I thought that was a pretty good deal. Next up was a floating D Spanish PBP Chewbacca, and another one I did send out at a Patreon Buy It Now alert. It was graded UKG 85%. Now, this one's a harder to find version of the Spanish PBP Chewbacca. There's the circle on foot variation where it's got a little EPM on the bottom of his foot, but this is the harder to find floating D. And tomorrow we're going to be covering a floating G Spanish PBP Hammerhead. First time I've ever really seen that labeled on the UKG label, and it was a UKG 90, and it sold for big money, huge money. So we'll talk about that one tomorrow. But going back to this floating D, this is not as hard to find as maybe some of the other Spanish PBPs that are out there, but it's certainly harder to find than the circle on foot version of the Spanish PBP Chewbacca. So he goes for a little bit more money. It sold for 125 pounds, which is 157 US dollars plus shipping. And again, I was tempted on this one because I don't have it, and I wouldn't mind having both variations, but the timing just didn't work out. I ended up bidding on so many UKG graded items yesterday, and I lost every one of them. I bid on like 10 different items, didn't win any of them, and that's okay. I mean, that just happens sometimes. So I had just got a bunch of really awesome items on Certified Link, as you guys have already seen in a video. So I didn't really have much money to spend anyway. I was going to throw it on PayPal credit, which I want to do. I do that a lot. But my balance right now is a little hefty. So I just decided that, when I bid on a lot of these items yesterday, I didn't bid hard. And as a result, I finished second on a lot of them. Next up was the Flesh Neck Leia Bespin Hong Kong. This was a beautiful example, really clean. Look how crystal clean the paint apps are on this one. I just thought it was a beautiful example. And maybe one little rub on the hand there, but I mean, other than that, the hand over here was beautiful. The eyebrows, everything, just a gorgeous figure, I thought. And it was 165 pounds, which is 207 US dollars plus, let's call it $37 shipping is what it sold for. I sent this one out because, loose and ungraded in this kind of condition, you're probably talking $140 anyway. And then you factor in the grading costs plus shipping to and from the grading. Even after all that, I mean, I think you're probably going to end up paying this much anyway. So I just thought it was a very fair price, and clearly one of y'all agreed with me because it was snapped up pretty quick. Here was an interesting one. This was kind of a custom case with a Wampa along with the box. So it was outside of the box, but it was a Palatoy box, and it was graded UKG 80%. So beautiful example there. And they kind of did a cool custom case with like a backdrop on the back of the Wampa with, you know, 2 pegs holding him in place. I just thought it was a really nice presentation. You can see how thick that backer is, you know, because the box for the Wampa inside this acrylic case is too big. So they wanted to kind of display it nicely. And I just thought it was a really cool display. And again, it was graded UKG 80%, which is right because, you know, it's got some discoloration between the legs and the torso and the arms. You know, the arms and the torso were slight shade of yellow versus the legs that were bright white. And then you see other examples where the arms are also white and then the torso's yellow. And so it's weird how sometimes the Wampa, it can just vary a lot in terms of what actually yellows versus not. I feel like with like Luke Bespin is a good example, or Leia, First 12 Leia. It's always the same parts that yellow, I feel like. With the Wampa, it isn't. It can be a mix and match in terms of what yellows and what doesn't. So anyway, that one did sell for 280 pounds, but it was a great display because it comes with the harder to find Palatoy box, which I thought was cool. 280 pounds was the final winning bid, $352 US. And then we have the Wampa's Chicken McNugget, which is the Tauntaun. This was graded UKG 85%. Beautiful case style here. It had just a gigantic dowel around the saddle and reins to hold the reins in place. I thought that was a genius idea there. And then it had some brackets for the ankles as well as the tail. So a very nice display piece there, I thought. And I don't know why, I was tempted on this one. I just thought it was a cool display. I didn't bid on it, but it sold for 290 pounds, which is $365 US plus shipping on that one. So after shipping to me in the US, it would have been like $410 plus taxes, so $450. So a little much for me, but very nice display there. And that was sold by the Muffin Man, and we'll cover some more of his loose graded gems, a lot of foreign variants, things like that in tomorrow's video. Now on to swseller.com, and he's a friend of the channel, watches the channel, had some beautiful examples, all AFA 80 that sold. The first was the Hong Kong R2D2 loose graded. That one sold for $153.50. And then he also had this Taiwan AFA R2D2 that went for less, which I was a little surprised by. You know, you could argue that maybe the sticker on this one wasn't as nice as the sticker on the Hong Kong, but it was also the harder to find Taiwan. So I figured this one would probably go for more, but I was wrong. It sold for $147.50 plus $12 shipping. And then we had a Tuscan Raider long eye tubes graded AFA 80. This is a little trickier variation to find. And the eye tubes on this one are a little bit longer than the standard Hong Kong. That one sold for $94, which I thought was a really good deal. I have an AFA 80 Plus that I paid like about $50 more for than this AFA 80 example. So I think someone got a really good deal on that one. And then here was a Luke Farm Boy. This was just a standard Hong Kong with the blonde hair and light pants. And that one sold for $163. Again, a very fair price for an AFA graded, high grade Luke Farm Boy. And then he also had the Taiwan Princess Leia, another variant I wouldn't mind grabbing at some point. And that one sold for $222.50. And, to me, I think that was a really fair price, just given that an AFA 85 probably sets you back at least double that price, at least. And that tends to be the kind of the going rate, right? When you look at, especially like Luke Farm Boys or Luke Stormtroopers, Luke Farm Boys, Princess Leia First 12s, even regular Stormtroopers, going from an AFA 80 to an AFA 85, it's almost always 2 times, if not 2.5 times. And you could maybe make an argument even on Princess Leia that it might be 3 times what an AFA 80 goes for. It's just really tough to get an AFA 80, especially one that's been freshly graded like this. So beautiful items from SW Seller, very trusted seller, and it always gets really high graded gems in. Next up, this seller had a AFA 80 Hong Kong join visor Hoth Stormtrooper. You can see maybe a little torso discoloration between the head and torso versus the arms and legs. That one sold for $88. Not a bad deal for a brand new case style. Join visor COO on leg. There's also a COO on boot join visor, and then COO on boot. Univisor or separate visors. So there's so many different Hoth Stormtrooper Hong Kong COOs. I think there's 4 altogether, really. And then you can start talking about Spanish figures and all kinds of stuff. So that one sold for $88, really good deal. And then he also had a Lily Letty AFA 80, and this one was every bit of an AFA 80. That was a beautiful example. That one sold for $160.50. Price I would have paid all day long. I had one. I want to go ahead and get another one because I gave mine away to a buddy of mine. So I'll probably grab one of these at some point soon. So I probably should have bid on that, but it is what it is. Maybe next time. But that was a really nice example there. I'd say an AFA 85 will probably set you back $250. $250, maybe $275, somewhere in that ballpark. I could be wrong. It could be closer to $300. But I've seen a few of them in the kind of mid 200s. It just depends on how clean it is. But, I've seen them selling on Facebook for a lot higher than 300 though. So who knows? But that was a beautiful example though for an AFA 80, 160.50. This one was a Taiwan Emperor's Royal Guard. I feel like it's a little harder to find the Taiwans and the no COOs for the ERG versus the Hong Kong. The Hong Kong seems to be pretty readily available. The no COO being the hardest to find other than maybe the Lily Letty. And then the Taiwan is kind of like a mid-range, harder to find example. Brand new K-style on this one, AFA 85. That sold for $175. That was another buy it now alert. I was tempted to buy it myself, but I decided to send it out first. And what I usually do, if I'm tempted and I'm definitely going to buy it, I'll send it out. And if nobody buys it in like an hour, then I'll buy it. But I haven't done that lately, but I have done that on a few items where I send it out for an hour or two. And then if nobody pulls the trigger, then I pull the trigger. Here was an AFA 85 Luke Stormtrooper archival case, brand new case style. It was also displayed with the coin. So that was an interesting display there. I had never seen that before. Usually AFA grades the coin and the figure. In this case, they graded it they just graded the figure and they did not grade the coin, but they did display it. So I don't know if this was a custom display or if maybe AFA agreed to do this somehow and just didn't grade the coin. I don't know. But it was an archival AFA 85 and it sold for $960, which is actually the lowest price I've seen in a while for a Luke Stormtrooper AFA 85. I mean, we've seen them very consistently lately go over $1,000, if not higher. I mean, we saw, I think it was an AFA, or excuse me, it was a UKG 90 that sold for over $1,600 lately, US dollars lately. So I don't know. I don't know why this one went so cheap. I thought that was a really nice display and worth every penny of $960, just given what some of the other data points that we've seen lately. Next up, this one fell underneath the radar, and I wish I had bid on it now, but this was an AFA 85 Plus brand new case-style Droids C-3PO, and there were only two photos of it, but and it only showed the front of it. It didn't show the back of it, so maybe that kept the bidding down a little bit, but that sold for $700, whereas the last CAS or AFA 85 Plus Droid C-3PO is an AFA 85 Plus. It sold for over $950. So this was a really good deal. And again, it kind of fell underneath the radar. Part of it maybe was the lack of good photos. But, the seller had 176 transactions with 100% positive feedback. So, it was definitely a legit sale. And that was a great deal. Really good deal there. And then finally, this was that CAS 80 Plus R2-D2 with the pop-up saber. That sold for $800. And I had this in a what to buy video like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it just sat and sat and sat. But it did finally sell for $800, free shipping. And again, I think that was a very fair price, just giving what an AFA 80 Plus would sell for. Probably close to $1,000 would be my guess. So you're getting maybe a 10 or 20% discount on a CAS 80 Plus versus the AFA 80 Plus. An AFA 80 is probably about $800. An AFA 80 Plus is probably about $1,000, if not more. And then an AFA 85, which is very tough to find, might set you back $1,500 to $1,600, believe it or not, loose graded, which is crazy. But I would wager that's probably what it would sell for. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales. We'll do a part 2 video on only UKG graded gems tomorrow. Please leave a like. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.